Hey everyone, welcome back to the Above Board podcast. And I have the good fortune of being back with the Rich B again. Rich, I mentioned on the last episode, so this is episode 160, and I mentioned on the last one, I was like, hey friends, I know everyone's missing the group and it's just me doing these, but someday we'll sync up calendars again. And then what good fortune I have that we synced up calendars.
Hey man, sometimes it's good if you can't be a Backstreet Boy to be in sync.
I don't even get that. What is that? Can you explain what
You
that
just
is?
said that we synced up our calendars, meaning we're in sync.
In sync.
Bro,
In sync. Okay.
that was
right.
that was a lob, man. That wasn't even complicated. That wasn't a difficult.
No, but I thought you were going at like I've the last like 3 or 4 episodes it's been me, and then now we're like the boy band's back together again.
Yeah,
and
no.
I
So you'd
didn't
be Justin.
understand.
So you'd be more like Justin Timberlake. So I guess I
don't
could have
think so.
I could have fixed that and said, we went from Justin Timberlake to being in sync. Okay, so just pretend like you didn't hear the first part.
Fair enough.
Well, it's good to be back. And I've got something, and I apologize to everyone listening if you hear dogs barking. I as everyone might know, I've got a 100-pound Doberman, and now we have a new addition to our family, Rambo.
Rambo.
He is a puppy, and he's already almost 60 pounds, John. So my German Shepherd, which I have just missed my German Shepherd, Rocky, for so long. And this guy is just so much like him. It's amazing. But
Rambo's bigger than my kids. He's huge already.
Rambo probably weighs more than Huddy, I think, at this point. He is a big boy. I don't know, John. Have you ever heard the speech that Theodore Roosevelt gave? I think the speech was called Citizenship in a Republic, and he delivered it in Paris like 1910. But it's really the passage that he's famous for is the man in the arena. Have you ever heard that?
I have.
I want to read it really quick.
Okay.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I think for me, that is one of the most powerful statements ever made about our world. It's almost as if Teddy Roosevelt had a vision of, well, maybe it's what we think our world is today, but it just shows that things have not changed. There was no internet trolls back in 1910. There were just probably jerks that put on their bowler hats and went, look at him, he's not going to make it. But now it's like, I post stuff on social media and I've noticed like I'll post something and somebody will actually take the time to go, what is this crap? Or this is nonsense, or no way. And I'm like, where were you when this thought came into your mind to shoot down something that you just disagree with or to mock it? And then I'll go and look at that person's page and they've got nothing. They've created nothing. They posted nothing. They've never put themselves out there. Their whole role in life is to go and shoot down other people. Mm-hmm. And, it just proves that human nature hasn't really evolved that much in 100-something years, because in 1910, he's talking about, basically, if you summarize this whole passage, he's saying give honor and credit to the men and women who are in the arena, who are trying, who are putting themselves out there, who are daring, who are taking chances. And I love how he says, his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Interesting. it's not about winning. This isn't about winning. It's literally cold and timid souls who just basically throw darts. They judge, they mock, they're the ones in the stands making fun of. That typical, we've all seen that guy that's completely out of shape, couldn't even walk around the block without passing out, but he's got all sorts of thoughts about the football player, this guy that's in peak amazing condition, or the MMA fighter or the boxer. And you look at this person and you're like, you're not the man in the arena. You're not the person fighting. You're not the person getting tackled by a 250-pound, dude. And I thought about how this is in life, in business, in our families, as parents, as significant others, as husbands, as wives, as friends, as moms, as dads, as kids. And I certainly think about how it is as entrepreneurs. When you heard those words, especially as a guy who's has definitely dared greatly, in my opinion, how do they strike you?
I think the courage to try to put yourself out there and to do something that is daring and courageous and difficult, I think that alone is something that I am inspired by for when I see other people doing that. And so you kind of use an analogy of people putting themselves out there like on social media or whatever. But I mean that spans across. That's the beauty of our podcast too, because like we could be talking about athletics and fitness. We could be talking about your business life. I mean, for me, I think about the circle of people that I choose to keep close to me. We always talk about this on the podcast. Like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the majority of your time with. And so I choose those people very selectively and very carefully. And then it's so admirable to me when I look at some of those folks that are starting businesses that are maybe social media is such a good example these days, because I'll have friends that are starting a business and people are throwing comments out there that are not positive or whatever, and just the courage to try is more daring than being the person that's there just throwing darts at them, and yet they keep going. And it's just I don't know it's a source of strength for me to watch people do that. And it inspires me to want to be someone that is daring and tries as well. That's what I think of when I hear that quote. But I'm curious, because it's such a powerful passage that you read. And you could take that, depending on where that receives you in life, you could pull at specific things and attributes to find inspiration from. So I guess maybe I'm curious from your standpoint, because as we were talking about this even before the podcast, that you wanted to read that quote. What is it that you're receiving right now that's really landing for you? Like what's going on in your life that you're like, wow, this quote means something for me?
What's interesting is sometimes I think we split ourselves into 2 people. I think we split ourselves into the doer and the observer. And I find myself oftentimes when I'm doing things, and right now professionally, I'm in sort of a different phase of my profession and my work that I do, and learning new things and taking on new kind of challenges. And I find myself being the doer. I had a very important call this morning with some really important people, and, could turn into some really fascinating and beautiful work. But I also was the cold and timid soul in the stands, kind of pointing at myself. So where this came up for me recently was a mix of 2 things: an idiotic comment on social media that some random woman made who has 0 content and 10 followers, and just said, "What is this crap?" No pretense, no context, no, I think this, or, wow, that's an interesting point, but have you ever thought maybe that? And it was to a simple quote, and I remember looking at that, and I deleted the comment because people started piling onto her, because the few people that like me in this world are very protective, which is nice. But I sat back and I thought, I'm not mad at her. And I just thought, why would you do that? What kind of person do you have to be to go on social media? Somebody says, something, some inspirational or some motivational or some thoughtful, let's just call it a thoughtful quote. And your response immediately is to type out, "This is garbage," or "This is stupid," or whatever. And then I pulled back and I thought, have I ever done that? And I haven't. And then I thought, no, yes, I have, but it's been directed at myself. So I think it's interesting how we can both sometimes dare to put ourselves out there while at the same time being very, very hard on ourselves. And what I wrote down about this particular passage, and by the way, just I encourage everybody, I mean, I read it, but I encourage everybody to just read it on their own, to like just download. You could just Google it, like Theodore Roosevelt's Man in the Arena, just Man in the Arena passage, Man in the Arena. And just the language that he uses is it speaks to my soul. I mean, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. I just picture a gladiator. I picture like somebody fighting in an arena with blood and sweat, and obviously that's taking it to the next level. And here's the 5 points I wrote down from my thoughts. Courage over criticism. I wrote down the value of effort over perfection, or we might call it progress over perfection.
Yeah.
Having respect for those who dare. Like, even if you're not the one that's going to dare, then have some respect for those that do. Endurance builds character. I realize that's true. You don't build character from easy things. And maybe the most important, it made me think of you because I wrote your initials next to it. Daring greatly defines legacy. Like, I feel like you are a legacy thinking person. And the way I would dig into these things is, you're welcome. Courage over criticism is really about, the way to personally apply this is, don't let the fear of judgment hold you back from stepping into challenging things or challenging roles. I've encountered a lot of people in my life who I feel haven't lived up to their potential, not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't. They were afraid to. The voices in their heads from childhood are still there. You're stupid. You're a woman. You're a young man. You're too short. You're too stupid. You didn't get straight A's. Whatever you tell yourself, or not, meaning that people have said to you, and so that's the one thing. And valuing effort over perfection is what I've realized when I look at great leaders is what they model or what they strive after is not so much flawlessness, but resilience. So it kind of, what matters is showing up and trying, fully trying. That's what I see. It's the effort, not the perfection. It's like the joke of a good day at the gym is better. I'm sorry. A bad day at the gym is better than a good day laying on your sofa, or a bad workout or a lame workout is better. And I've even said that to you, because there's been days you're like, oh man, I've been so busy today. And, I had to cut my workout short. I'm like, but how long did you work out? You're like 20 minutes. I'm like, that's 20 minutes more than 98% of the population have done. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. Respect for those who dare. And I wrote down something when you were talking about who you surround yourself with, choosing to surround yourself with doers and people who are willing to enter the arena. Think about warriors. Think about Navy SEALs. Do you know who they hang out with the most?
People like them.
Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
They get together. They have a Navy SEAL bars and Navy SEAL clubs. And I realized that, like, somebody who's a high performer, a truly high performer, superstar athlete, a successful businesswoman, a military special operations person, they tend to try to be around the people that get their warrior ethic. It builds character, and just basically, whether it's your relationships, your health, your goals, that you stay in it even when it's hard. And then lastly, this whole daring greatly defines legacy makes me think of a John Kennedy driving up in his 10-year-old car with a pile of papers on the passenger seat as I'm getting my mail. And I'm like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm starting this, and I'm scared. Like, not, you didn't say I'm scared, but the vibe was like that you were. And I remember thinking to myself how you're defining your legacy, and that I guess a legacy can't be defined by playing it safe, but it's defined by like the battles that you engage for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
I don't think legacy can be built when what's your legacy? I want to be wealthy. Good luck. That's not a legacy, right? What's your legacy? I want to destroy my competition. That's not a legacy. But that legacy is when you're engaging in what you're doing for a higher purpose. So those are that's what I wrote down that I take away from this passage. And I don't know if that resonates with you or with our listeners, but
yeah, no, there's a couple of funny things I want to bring up. I don't know if it's like that moment that you're talking about when I pulled up in that old beat up. It was an Infinity, so I felt
it
proud
was
of
an
it. But it was
Infinity.
an old beat up
It was
Infinity,
old.
and I don't know if I remember it too, but I feel like I remember it because you've recounted that story before. It's almost like a picture. Like after a while, you look at a picture and like you connect to that memory because you have that picture. You've recounted that story so many times that I remember that too. Like I can feel like rolling my passenger window down, driving by you, and we chatted for a few minutes. I remember that too, and that means a lot to me that you hold on to that memory. Is it weird that like you mentioned like crushing your competition, but there's an aspect for me that I don't know why I'm made up this way, but like, I mean, I am competitive, and it's not so much like competitive against my competition or whatever, but I mean, I guess it is. That's what competition is. But like the criticism thing. So I wrote down what you said, which is courage over criticism. Is there something to be said for like being able to take that negative energy and spinning it positive? Like I kind of like it a little bit. I mean, I can't be the only one. So I feel people listening to this, I love like in the comments or something, but to mention this, I remember, and I wrote them down. I wrote down the quotes of the things that I heard people say about Matt and I when we started the company. I've talked about this on this show as recently as probably like the last like conversation or two with you. And I just enjoy it. Like it's almost like there's a Michael Jordan. My algorithm on my Instagram is just totally geared towards things like people selling me things that I would want. So it's like a picture of Michael Jordan, and the quote is "Tell me I can't." And I don't know. There's this that turning that negative into a positive. I almost like hearing that, and I haven't put myself out there on social media the way that you have, where you can. Even in this sea of like positive remarks and conversation on comments, people can say negative things. Anybody can, some faceless person could say something negative, but it's not when it's a faceless person that says it. Because when that happens to me, and I've had that happen to me too, I'm like, but it's when somebody that is maybe my competition or whatever says I can't accomplish something, and I'm like, oh, like I'll burn my whole life down just to accomplish that thing. Like I get super competitive about it. And I want to comment on that because the courage over criticism thing, I listen to that and I'm like, no, duh. Like that everybody should do that. But I don't know that everyone does that. And I don't know that that's like I don't know that that's a positive thing either that I do that. But
it is a positive thing, I think. It reminds me of Rocky, the movie Rocky. And there's one part, and I apologize if I'm misremembering which character said which, but it was either Apollo was on this outside the ring with Mickey, or it was his brother-in-law Paulie was outside with Mickey. It was one or the other, and they go, "He's getting killed in there." Yeah. And then Mickey goes, "No, he's not. He's getting mad." Yeah. And it's just like when Rocky's like getting punched, and all of a sudden he starts going, "Come on, come on, come on!" And the more that he's getting punched, then all of a sudden, like you get the goosebumps and the music, soars, and all of a sudden, pop, 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 pop. So I think what Stallone was trying to recreate in that moment was that we do feed off of that. We do feed off the punches being thrown. We do feed off. I've been in a lot of fights as a kid, and I got beaten pretty much out of 10, I'd say 10. No, probably 9. But the one that I remember, it's the only, I mean, I can remember taking the beatings pretty badly because I was in a bad neighborhood and just, kids that were like in gangs and stuff. And it was always like 3-on-1, so, I had the tough parents that I'd get beat up by 3 kids and I'd come home with my nose broken, my eyes swollen shut. And my parents I'd bang at the door to try to escape, and they'd be like, "Go back out and fight." And
jeez, what a time to be alive in America. If you raise kids that way now, your kids will get taken away from you.
Oh my God. But it's funny. There's one part of me, I would never do that to my kids. Well, also they're black belts, so good luck. But I would never do that to my kids. But there's one part of me that I can just tell you that as a little kid, it was horrifying, and I'm not condoning it at all. There's a small part of me, though, that it taught me a couple of things. It taught me how to hide, how to climb trees. It taught me how to fight. But I remember one fight, and this kid had just beat me up my whole life. And my parents had sent me to martial arts training and, boxing, and I still didn't know what I was doing, right? And then this kid came over and he just said some mean things. I remember he shoved me and I lost my balance and I fell and I hit my head on the bumper of my brother's car that was parked in the driveway. And his big brother was across the street and started laughing at me. And all of a sudden, this energy inside me that I'd never had before popped up, and I launched myself at this kid. And I can close my eyes and still see the look on his face of like, you don't fight back. Cause I'd be like just put my arms, on my head and get punched by 4 people. Right. I beat this kid so bad that my brother heard the screaming and came out. So I was probably, let's say 10. My brother was 25 because my brother's 15 years older than me. Right. So he comes out and the older brother comes across the street to get on me. And my brother was bigger than this dude. Said, you stand right there. Your little brother's been beating the crap out of my little brother for, his whole life. And I beat this kid so bad. But it took so much getting beaten down for me to get to that point. So sometimes, in recovery, they talk about hitting rock bottom. And that's when somebody has a loved one who's deep in their addiction. Mm-hmm. And they will no longer give them money. They won't let them stay at their house. They're like, you've got to just figure this out. You're on your own. Don't come to me. I'm not helping you, whatever. And it's hard. It must be brutal. And I know the listeners that are listening to this have either been there or on the other side. But they say a lot of times in 12-step programs that the person has to hit their rock bottom. They have to be homeless. They have to be without anybody. They have to be walking the streets on Christmas because their family won't have them over because they're embarrassing, whatever the case may be. And I think that rock bottom sometimes, to your point, or if it's not a rock bottom, it's like Rocky, right? It's getting, if the word mad isn't the right word to plug in Rocky, it's getting mad. But maybe for another person, it's being convicted or asserting themselves, or it's not even about wanting to take the other person out. It's just sometimes, like you said, tell me I can't. Sometimes people need that. So I think that it's not unusual what you experience. And nor do I think it's bad. I think it only gets bad. Not that you can't have a level of success with this, but when your whole life is built around, we always see those characters in the movies that, the gazillionaire, and he's just all about destroying his competition, and they're never really happy people. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of happy dictators out there, I would imagine. They all seem kind of miserable, right? Yeah. And we know how dictators usually end up, right? Mussolini could tell you. So I think that being happy to destroy those around you. And one thing I'll say about you, and as being like a man in the arena, I feel like if a young, financial advisor came up to you and said, I really look up to you, and, I'm working for this company, but, what do you think I should focus on? I can't imagine you saying, well, you're my competition. I'm not going to like, you'd be the, you're such a great guy about that stuff. So anyway, my rant on that
I'd prefer that person to come up to me and tell me that I suck. And that's the motivation. Matt always loves that too. When like something happens and he's like, oh no, he's like, all it takes is somebody telling John something negative or that he can't do it, and then he's going to find a way. So I'd prefer that person to come up and tell me I suck. But no, honestly, again, competition is, I have a healthy dose of competition, and it's more competitive against like these benchmarks that we have for ourselves. And it's not
right. You're not about taking somebody else down.
No,
you don't want to take anybody down. I think you just, your commitment is to your clients and wanting them to be successful. And I think that back to that daring greatly defines legacy is that it's defined by the battles I wrote down. It's defined by the battles you willingly engage in, but for a higher purpose.
Sure.
Battling just for a battle is useless, I think, but battling for a higher purpose. That's why you always put your money on the people that are defending their kingdom, or the people that are fighting.
They have something to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always,
The other thing that you mentioned that I love was effort over perfection, which we did an entire podcast you and I called progress over perfection.
Yeah.
So in a way, we were probably just slowly gearing ourselves up for ultimately this conversation that we're having today.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I think about that all the time, like one of the quotes is, the person who comes up short again and again, who at their worst, if he fails, he at least fails while daring greatly. I mean, for me personally, and then the friends or the people that I think about that are in my circle, you included in that, anyone who's experienced failure, it's the ability to take that failure and turn that into something positive or a lesson learned or whatever the case may be,
Absolutely.
because that's what shapes your
Absolutely.
will to continue to pursue and move on.
And,
I mean, you can't have a great life without a lot of failures.
No, and here's what's funny. There's people that they're not even afraid of failing, they're afraid of trying. So it's even behind the failing, because you have to try in order to fail. So if somebody says, "Oh, I failed every time I've tried," good for you. Like, that's amazing. Keep going. It's the people that say, "Oh yeah, I don't want to," and I feel like I've done that. I could have been an entrepreneur, but I was afraid. I mean, I'm going to be 58 this year, so maybe it's too late. The people that manage my money are being very careful with what I do, but John and Matt. But
I'm smiling because I remember when we did, was it 55 and Fit? I don't know. We did a podcast about that, and that just seems like yesterday. It's just crazy how.
So are we?
Because I always know you're 20 years. You're 20 years older than me. That's how I always know.
So I'm going to be 58 and tired will be the next one.
What is it? What was it?
58 and tired might be my next one. But in all seriousness, when somebody says, "Oh, I failed," I think that's amazing. It's the people that don't try. To close this out, I've written 4 books. That's not impressive at all. But whenever somebody comes up to me and says, "You've written 4 books, and what advice would you give me?" They're like, I really, I feel like I would be a good writer. I want to write this leadership book, or I want to write this about whatever. And I go, "Well, how many pages have you written so far?" "Well, none. No, I'm thinking." I go, "Okay, stop thinking. Go home tonight, open your laptop, get a cup of coffee, set a timer for 1 hour, and just write." And do that every day, again and again and again and again, and you'll have written a book. When somebody comes up to me, which was very sweet, a guy came up to me in the gym this week, actually, and he said, and it's always, it's a mixed bag when someone asks you how old you are, because it's kind of like, "Oh, look how cute the old man is working out," But this dude
59
came up to me,
and fine. I've decided that's going to be next year.
We'll have
that's
to
going to
wait
be the
2 more
podcast.
years. But he came up to me and he goes, "Excuse me," and he's probably, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 57. He goes, "Do you mind me asking, like, how long have you been working out?" Since I'm 13. He's like, "Do you take any, stuff?" I'm like, "No, I don't." I'm like, "But thanks for thinking I do." And he's like, "What's your secret? Like, I just watched you do," because Luke was with me, so I have a witness. After my chest workout, I put a 45-pound plate on my back and I did 2 sets of 15 push-ups. And the dude was impressed because I'm old, right? So he thought I was going to, like, crawl out of there. And I said, "I just show up. Like, that's it. I show up on bad days." I hurt my back really bad the other day, but I went to the gym yesterday and walked on the treadmill for 35 minutes. And just because I couldn't lift anything, but I'm going to still show up. So that's what I say to people.
That's
people
the key, right? That's the
it
key.
Is.
Like, it's
Well,
it's not even daring to do something great. It's literally just daring to show up the next day. And if you took your licks that day,
else, if you just keep showing up,
amen.
I mean, that just puts you, I'm not saying that's all you have to do, but if that is what you do, you, by showing up to the gym and doing, obviously you have to do something, but showing up is we're taking for granted. Like, it doesn't mean like walk into the bookstore and just stand there. But if you go in and then pick up a book and read a couple of pages, or if you go into the gym and do a couple of push-ups, or if you go outside and walk a couple of blocks, or write a couple of pages, or read whatever, that is going to give you the fuel, the habit to continue to go. And I do the same thing as a speaker, and I've been speaking for 20 years, and I'm coaching somebody right now to develop her talk that she wants to do. A great leader in healthcare who I see some great things for her. And I just said to her, just don't Don't filter, don't edit, don't just, what do you want to talk about? What are you passionate about? And just do it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go and take just go and do it for free and do it for free. And the rest will take care of itself. So, you know what? I think that at the end, because we're at time right now, I think the big thing that I just want to say to people is, you know, don't let the naysayers stop you. Let them fuel you like they do John. Don't worry or stay up at night trying to be perfect. Just make the effort. Just go for it. And then honor people that do it. Honor people, whether you like them, don't like them, doesn't matter. Just the people who are taking the chances. I realize that the person that has no content but then makes fun of mine, that's because they're insecure because they have no content. They probably wish they could do something, but they won't. So I wish them well. And that failing is a good sign because it means you're putting forth the effort and it's going to give you that character. And it's your legacy. As long as you're focused on doing something for a higher purpose. Super buff or being super wealthy is great, but what's the higher purpose? For you, John, you do health stuff because you want to walk your grandkids and your kids down the aisle when they get married someday. So that's your fitness is not just because you want to be cute, because you already have a beautiful wife. You of course want to be attractive for her, but you're doing that for your legacy, and I think that's what drives you for a higher purpose.
My daughter asked me the other day, we were watching a movie in our bed and it was bedtime. And so she's like, will you carry me to bed? And I got so emotional because I was like, oh, I used to do this every day of your life, every day of your life when you were a baby. And so I picked her up and carried her. And I'm not gonna lie, my back hurt. But I just thought, well, I gotta get her all the way. Now that I've committed to this, I gotta get her all the way there. And that is those little, like for me, my fitness shows up in those little moments where I'm like, yeah, I never want to be able to not carry her even as she's getting older, because those moments are few and far between. But I think about my grandkids someday, like the hope of that and the excitement of being a grandparent. I get to watch like clients like love being grandparents. It's so sweet. Yeah. And I think for me, I want to be able to like pick my grandkids up and throw them in the air and play with them too. So I would agree with all of that. One thing I want to end with, which is not a departure from this conversation, but it's definitely an add-on too, is for those who haven't read the book, or maybe it's worth rereading the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Because
great book.
That book to me, it's such a simple concept. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it makes sense why it became such a bestseller. Because I just love this principle of you want to be the type of person that goes to the gym? Like, you just start telling yourself, I'm the type of person that goes to the gym, and go for 5 minutes. Set a stopwatch, walk in the gym and go. Don't even work out. Just for the first week, just go be there, because what'll happen is you'll make that a habit to go. And next thing you know, you're going to say, well, I'm here. I might as well go walk on the treadmill, or I'm here. I might as well go lift some weights. And then next thing you know, you've turned 5 minutes into 15 and 15 into 25 and so on and so forth. And you become the type of person. That's the hard thing about habits, because good habits take a long time to build. And then it seems like the most minor thing can break a good habit. That's the hard part that I find. I get in my own head about it. If I haven't done something actually use our podcast. First of all, like look at the evolution of how, you were always good, Rich. You're a professional speaker. You always came in locked and ready to go. But like, if you go way back and you listen to me, it was pretty rough. And so props to any listeners who've been with us all 160 episodes. But even as recent as this year, Rich and I have recorded podcasts, and then at the end of it went, no, that wasn't very good. And we didn't release that podcast, but we still showed up. We still record. Just the habit of showing up, like, I don't know. I like that example, and I like kind of relating it to this podcast even, because we have showed up on days where like, we don't know what we're going to talk about. We don't feel inspired to talk about anything, but you know what? We're going to do it. And even if we don't air it, we still had a good conversation and we worked on that skill. It's like showing up to the gym when you don't want to. It's showing up to a meeting when you don't want to. That's the thing. It's not miraculous. When you look back after 5 years of what someone's accomplished, you're like, oh man, they've done so much. Like, that's so amazing. They just showed up every day and they did the little things. So Atomic Habits, to me, that book is a good add-on to this conversation.
Absolutely. You can't dig a hole by just wishing that it would happen. You also can't dig a hole by grabbing a shovel and standing there. You've got to grab the shovel, stick it in. You have to decide to do it. Think about it, plan it, grab the shovel, stick it in the ground, and push
And
out
then
some
tell
dirt.
yourself,
Right?
I'm the type of person that digs holes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've talked to people who are like, "Oh, I'm not a weightlifter. Oh, I'm not a bodybuilder. Oh, I'm not a fit person. Or I don't eat. I don't do the healthy thing." Yeah, you don't, because you've decided that that's who you are. So, it's getting into the arena and doing it for a higher purpose. Going to the gym just for, like wanting to look cute is great when you're younger, I guess, but the higher purpose of it is more meaningful. I feel like what I do for work, there's a higher purpose. So focus on your higher purpose. That's what encourages you to be in the arena.
Can I say one more thing? You talked about the doer and the observer. I would say to, like, as much as I love being the doer in my own life and the things that I work towards, I really cherish being an observer. I mean, I talked about it at the open of this, like, but watching, someone like you, Rich, go and speak in front of an audience. I mean, it's captivating. It's really like, I put myself in that situation and I'm like frozen almost, of like, why I wouldn't even know what the next word to come out of my mouth would be to talk in front of an audience in the thousands the way that you have before. And I'm in awe of that. And I think that's something else that I think is valuable and worth mentioning, because it's not all about you, meaning like the person listening to this podcast, like, how am I going to be the doer? How am I going to be the man in the arena? But then being the observer of other people and cheering those people on, not being the one criticizing them, but being the one in support of and giving them those words of affirmation. Because, what you opened up with, it's like, man, it sucks, man. Those things that you hear from the stands of the audience, like, unfortunately, Rich, like, you've attuned yourself. And I mean, I'm saying this, it's not like a critical comment, but it's like a true comment. Like, you've attuned yourself to hear some of the bad things. You like filter out. I mean, but like, that's how human nature is. Like, we hear the bad things, we don't hear the good things. And so I want you to hear the good things. And that's kind of what I'm echoing on this podcast. And that is the importance of the circle of people that are around you.
I agree.
That are also willing to be observers in your life as you're trying to be a doer and be the man in the arena too. Like, it's an important thing to lift others up.
Well, I appreciate what you said. I feel the same about you. And I think, just people, to close this thought out, for every one person jeering and booing you in the stands, there's probably 10 who are cheering you on. And you just have to sometimes decide who you're going to tune into. And it can go back and forth. You can go AM, FM, right? You can go listen to the person booing you because maybe that pushes you on. And then every once in a while, though, you turn to that person that looks at you and says, I believe in you. You got this. You can do this. And if you don't have that person in your life, then be that person in someone else's life, and they'll do that for you.
Yeah. I find that I need both of those. I need the AM and the FM. I need the FM. I need the positive people in my life that do care about me, that say those kind things. And then the people that don't, I mean, you obviously take that into account too. Like, someone that's not in your close circle that doesn't have the kindest things to say about you, well, they're not in your close circle for a reason. And they might, they say those negative things, and I can take that as fuel too. I almost find that I think you put that a good way, like the AM and FM. Like, I almost find that I can oscillate between the two and find the motivation where and when I need to. And I think that can be a healthy thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be the worst thing in the world, even though sometimes I feel like,
I think basically the wise human being doesn't 100% believe everybody who tells them they suck, and they also don't 100% believe everybody who tells them they're the most amazing thing that walks on the earth.
Amen.
I think having a healthy balance between I could be better and I'm doing my best is a good thing.
Yeah, and you don't need everyone's approval. You just need to keep showing up.
Nope, just keep showing up.
Amen.
Keep showing up.
Take us home, buddy.
All right. Well, episode 160. This is great. So we've been doing this for a while, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's newly joining us and everybody who has been with us for a while. If you would do us a favor, here's my one ask. Please comment and give us some good ratings on iTunes, which would be so meaningful. But also, if I could ask you a favor, it's kind of a multi-level marketing scheme here. Just kidding, not a real one, not at all. If you would please share this podcast episode with 3 people who you think might need to hear about the man in the arena, we would be grateful if you did that. And I just want to thank you all for listening to us and for your time. And I want to thank my buddy John for his time today. And thank you all for being here for the Above Board podcast. Until the next time, you got this. Just keep showing up.